Good morning, everybody. Let me welcome you all. We've got some new members, but before we do that, can I remind you, members and staff, that the public section of this meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Bay of Plenty Regional Council website following the meeting. I also remind all present that local government decision making affords no protection to councillors, council staff and the public for comments made during the meeting that may subsequently be challenged in a court of law and determined to be slanderous. Before I welcome the new people to the committee, can I just ask that everybody turns their cell phones to silent? Make sure you hit the button on your speaker so that you are recorded, because we have people on Zoom. And can I just now ask, I better introduce our new councillors, our new alternate, and who's the alternate? You are. Glenn, can you start and introduce your team then?
I'll go first. So Glenn Crowther, and I'll hand over to Rod.
Rod Taylor, Councillor for Te Papa Ward and Young City Council. And Rick Karaka, Take Ward, Tauranga City Council.
Okay, thank you. And welcome to our first meeting in the Public Transport Committee. Alternates are encouraged to sit around the table in this meeting. And we have, before I go for apologies, I'm just as an introduction, can I ask any Bay of Plenty Regional Council transport staff, can you please stand? Now, have a good look at these gentlemen and ladies, because what we do in this committee is we don't interfere in operations. We actually, we're about governance, and we either expect you to be able to do the job for us or to contract to do the job. And I just have to say that the people standing in this room, and you should be standing as well, have done a fantastic job on the on-demand service. And I just got the figures last night up to yesterday for September, but going through, we're going to break through 20,000 patrons on the on-demand service, in the next 10 days. So we do it, the bus service that was replaced was for 51, and it was averaging 353 passengers per month, and that was 3 big buses going around to do that. The on-demand is doing that 10 times. So it's still early days, and it's horses for courses, but this looks fantastic, and I thank staff for the work that you've done on that. So you can sit down now. Sorry to interrupt, take some time, but I think it's worth celebrating that. That's fantastic. 20,000 passengers in the first 6 months is what we're looking at. So we move on. Can I have apologies, please? I've got Susan Collins from NZTA, and I'm not sure about Gary Maloney. He's an apology from NZTA as well. You'll be interested, Gary Maloney, some of you from the east would know him well. He used to be our sole transport planner, executive when I first got on council. So he's been around a long time, and he works these days for NZTA. So we welcome him back when he gets here. I've got an apology from Councillor Shirley, and I've got Councillor Thompson and Mayor Tapsell, who's the alternate for Rotorua on Zoom. Are there any other apologies?
So moved, Chairman.
Moved by Councillor Thurston, second by Councillor Crack.
I can't.
Oh, you're an alternate. No, you can't be. Councillor Crowther, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Items not on the agenda, there are none. Order of business, there is no change. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest? There are none recorded. Public excluded business to be transferred into the open. There is none, is it? There is none. And the minutes, which are to be confirmed of the previous meeting, and that's on page 9 of our agenda. Would someone like to move that they be true and correct? Councillor Campbell and seconded by Councillor Neves. Is there any discussion on those minutes? There being none, all in favour, please say aye. It's carried. So minutes of the Public Transport Joint Committee on the 4th of June, and that's on page 16 of our agenda. Would someone like to move? Jen, can you move that because you were there? That they move that they be accepted. And I'm happy to second that. Is there any discussion on those? All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. We move on to the Arataki report.
Tēnā koutou, committee members, through you, Mr. Chair, I've got the pleasure of bringing you the Public Transport Arataki report. So this report looks at the performance of our networks over the past quarter, but given that that quarter was the last of last financial year, we've also got the full financial year figures for you this morning. So to start off with our high-level patronage summary, compared to the same quarter last year, patronage across the region was up 15.7%. When we look at that across a full financial year, our patronage was just under 23% higher than the previous financial year. Looking at our total mobility passenger trips, some similar impressive trends there. So against the same quarter last year, up just below 29%, and then just below 32% financial year versus financial year. I would note that these figures exclude on-demand patronage. So why are we seeing such positive growth? In terms of positive impacts, we had the implementation of the Community Connect scheme on the 1st of July 2023. We increased the number of trips, especially in Tauranga, that we're offering. So that was the move back to a 90% timetable after a prolonged recovery from COVID. And many of you will recall the driver shortage challenges that we faced at that time. And we have, over the past 12 months, made some minor changes to the networks. There are some other contributing factors. It's hard to tease out the exact impact that these are having, but we are hearing from our communities that there is pressures on living costs, and we've seen, or we attribute the increased paid parking charges in the CBD and increased fuel costs to more people questioning the modes that they're taking and relying on public transport as and when they can. So just to break this down by our individual networks throughout the region, there you can see that Tauranga Urban up 31% year on year, intra-regional 43%, Western 17%, Rotorua 11%, and then the Eastern Bay 17%. On the right there, you've got a breakdown by demographic. So you can see that our largest user group is adults, followed by youth, senior and child. But just to note that if you add children and youth together, you get 39%. So combined, they are our biggest user group. Councillor von Velzen has already stolen a bit of my thunder around on-demand. We're only showing here the previous financial year, so there are a few months missing off this. But what I would add is we have seen continued growth since the end of last financial year. and those numbers continue to be encouraging. We are beginning to see some interesting trends and stats come out of the trial. As many of you know, we're looking to harvest a lot of data, both around the suitability of this service model and its potential future application, but also understanding better how people want to move around our city. We've put in bottom left there just a screen grab showing you the sort of data that we can get out of this, showing where the real hotspots are on really quite a granular level, which will be really helpful for future public transport planning. I should also note that we are about to hit our 6-month anniversary for On Demand, and we will be bringing a detailed 6-month progress report back to the next meeting of this committee, which will overlay the patronage with the financials as well. Accessible transport. So we had a 14% increase on the previous quarter and a 29% increase on the same quarter last year. Just to put that into numbers, that was an additional 32% trips on our total mobility platform compared to last calendar year. And then for our accessibility concession, we had a 37% increase on last quarter. So across the full year, that's up on almost 40%. Just to go through some customer experience points. You can see here in the pie chart the reasons that customers are inquiring. So over the past quarter, we had just over 5,000 inquiries from customers, and all but 1.1% of those inquiries have been resolved. Only 1.1% of those remain outstanding as of when the report was compiled. Of these, timetable inquiries make up the largest portion at 28%, with bus inquiries and B-card inquiries 25% and 22% respectively. Complaints make up 9% of the tickets raised, and 23% of those we've apportioned to reliability, which is predominantly linked to congestion caused by traffic and roadworks. Of note, in the bottom left is the graph showing which routes missed the most trips over the past quarter. We've got the usual suspects on that graph, unfortunately. So number 40 tops the list. Many of you will be aware of the congestion that we face in the Turret 15th corridor, and we're excited to see that the project to increase the efficiency of that corridor has been funded, and no doubt will bring many benefits to our patrons from Welcome Bay. We've also got delays on Route 1 that uses the Fraser Devonport corridor. Again, there'll be benefits there from the funded works along 15th Avenue and the review of junctions. Route 5, congestion around Mount Maunganui, Hewletts Road area. 55, the top end of Cameron Road, and Route 60, and that's predominantly due to the congestion in Otamotai in the afternoon when school children depart. And then finally, just to go through high-level finances. Full year total operating surplus was 1.7 million favourable. The reasons for that were that expenditure was lower than forecast. The reasons for that were that we had an underspend in consultancy that is tagged to services, and that actually offset a small overspend on our operating contracts. But overall, that brought us lower on expenditure. Because we class our subsidy from NZTA as revenue, if you have less expenditure, you also have less revenue. So that explains why there's a bit of a dip there. Should note around the contracts, slight overspend compared to budget. That's because inflation was a little bit more severe than anticipated earlier in the year. But as I say, we were able to manage it within our overall budget envelope by being more frugal on consultant spending. That concludes my presentation for this morning, but more than happy to take questions and comments from members.
Calling for questions. Councillor Nees, Councillor Taylor.
Firstly, I thought I heard somewhere that some of the other providers of on-demand buses across the country were backing out the service. Could you give us an update on that?
Through you, Chair. Yes, so I think it's understood that on-demand is effective, but it is generally a more expensive way of delivering patronage on a passenger basis. We're aware that there are reviews going on around the country, and some councils have unfortunately decided to postpone or cancel their services. So my understanding is there's a review in Timaru. Hawke's Bay have had to make some difficult decisions as well. As I say, we're yet to pull the detailed financials against the patronage for our service, so it'll be interesting to understand how ours is performing in a Tauranga context as we move into the second 2/3 of our trial.
Thank you. And just one other question. One of the routes that actually did have a drop was the Tauranga to Katikati route. So why do you think that route has dropped when all the other ones are going in the other direction?
It's hard to pin down exact factors for that. There has been a lot of congestion in that corridor with the works that were undertaken, especially on the Wairau Bridge in last financial year. And given that the absolute patronage numbers on that service are relatively low, we do see big seasonal impacts on that service, including things like where public holidays fall. So yes, it is unfortunate to see that one trending down, but as I said, there have been challenges in delivering reliable services in that corridor.
Councillor Taylor first.
Thank you, and apologies if I ask a question that I should know the answer to. I've been the new boy on the block.
Oh, feel free.
Right, so sorry, the first question is, please, page 30. There's a big hockey stick on the capital chart. TMS solution. Can you clarify what that might be?
So through you, Chair, our capital budget is relatively small, so absolute changes can cause big shifts on the graph. We have had to sort of shuffle around some things in our programme, which likely leads to some of the lumps that you're seeing in the charts there.
Sorry, 462 million.
The capital.
It says that, but that was the budget.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like a typo.
Sorry, just wondering what it was.
Can staff take that away and come back to you, Master?
Sorry, 462,000, sorry.
Yeah.
Let me come back to you on that, Councillor. It's clearly something in the budget.
Okay, thank you. Second question. There was a subsidy, government subsidy. How much do you think that impacted the rise in our patronage?
It's difficult to say. Anecdotally, subsidies do increase awareness of the services that we offer and convince people to give it a go. Given a number of factors out on the streets, it's hard to exactly determine the causality of various things, but certainly around things like Community Connect, which has brought in additional subsidy through for passengers, that has undoubtedly had a positive impact. We are commencing a fares review at the moment, so the impact of those various schemes and subsidies is being considered through that process.
Sorry, do we have one more? Sorry, the missed trips is 300 good or bad?
So we tend to use the global comparison of looking at number of trips missed versus number of trips run. So the missed trips represents 1% of total trips. Generally speaking, that is that is relatively encouraging, and that does show progress against where we were over the past couple of years, and the missed trips that we had due to driver availability and traffic disruption. That being said, when you look on absolute terms, that's a fair few hundred times that passengers were inconvenienced. So clearly there's still room to do better. So just because it's 1% doesn't mean that we're not focusing on doing better in that area. Thank you.
Dennis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just off where you're on demand, I mean, very good news about the usage being so high. Does that mean that that service is now at capacity, over capacity, or is there still some room?
It's a very good question. Through you, Chair, there is still some capacity. If you look at the graph, you will see that things are the curve is beginning to shallow slightly. On demand is technology driven. So the app in the background is assigning seats to passengers. And what we have the ability to do is play with some of the algorithms in the back. So what we have started to do over the past couple of weeks is look at try and increase the efficiency to optimize the number of passengers per vehicle. So we're excited to see whether that does allow us to realize better efficiency rates and better utilization. But as I say, it's all part of that trial. It's new ground for us, and we're excited to see how we can increase efficiency through the smart use of technology over the remainder of the trial.
Supplementary, Mr. Chairman. I think congratulations to all your staff. Outstanding result. Where do we go to on the future? Are you doing surveys of the type of people that are using it? Is it possible that in the future you'll migrate towards larger vehicles or buses on some of those routes where there's a prevalence of people using your on-demand?
Through you, Chair, I think it's important that we let the trial run its course. 6 months is encouraging, but we really need to see how this sort of beds into the community. Is there going to be that long-term support for the service? In terms of what next, we will be bringing a report back to council to get a steer on the regional council's appetite around continued involvement in this space, but noting that we are in a constrained environment from central government. To talk about vehicle size, one of the benefits of this in its current form is that we can run vehicles right into the heart of residential areas, which has been a significant challenge for our larger vehicles in the Lakes and Pies Par. So I think there's a balance there if you don't want to lose that flexibility, but clearly at some point with relatively small vans, we will hit a capacity limit. We won't be able to carry more patrons. Thank you.
Councillor Turek and then Thurston.
Thank you. It's still regarding the on-demand service. So in the other areas that are looking at potentially removing the service, 2 questions is one, they also use the technology-driven model like we do, like app-driven, and also for in considerations of the service or providing it or not, is the plan to, if they decide to remove the service, to remove the budget or shift that budget onto enhancing the existing service?
Through you, Chair, I can't speak on behalf of the financial situation of other authorities, but to talk about the platforms at which they're operating. So all of the on-demand trials in New Zealand use broadly the same digital platform. So it is an app-based thing with some algorithms sitting behind it. So there is that sort of uniform approach to it, and there are only really 2 providers currently that do that, and both of those providers have been used across New Zealand. So we've got case studies of both of their systems that we can pull on.
Can I just add for you that Hawke's Bay, for instance, uses their on-demand strategy was to actually use it in the off-peak on their busiest routes, and that did not prove to be at all economic, and that's why they've pulled. That's my understanding, having spoken to them. But so they're when you look at on-demand trials, you've got to look apples with apples. this one is going exceptionally well, but it was, the route that it's servicing was very poorly patronised and so very expensive to operate for us before. So that's, and I think the staff have been very clever in only in terminating it at the hospital, because if you go too long a route with the small buses, the utilisation deteriorates. So, but using the hospital, I think we've had pretty good uptake from that employer. Word of mouth has really helped get that service operating really well. So that's kudos to the staff. Yeah. Have you got anything else?
So say Hawke's Bay, you gave an example. So would they just keep the existing budget and just reshuffle it around the service, or are they looking at removing some of the budget?
Through you, Chair, I can't speak on behalf of the financials of other councils. I'm not aware of how they have funded their trials, so I can't answer that question, I'm afraid.
Councillor Thurston.
Just a couple of comments, Chairman, but to Councillor Coorach, you'll recall that the pressure for the on-demand came out of the last term of the TCC Council, and it's a very unique circle that it's travelling on, and it came out of the rest homes, sort of further down. That's where the pressure came from, who wanted to access Tauriko and also the hospital. So, but the other comment I wanted to make was, you know, until the numbers are finally crunched, we really don't know the success or otherwise of this, and it is only a trial, because, you know, we've been told over the years that the Hawke's Bay one in Hastings was a phenomenal success. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chairman. Likewise, South Canterbury and Timaru, it was trumpeted as a phenomenal success too. But then when they crunched the numbers at the end, it was just unsustainable. But I think South Canterbury have even sold their stock, correct me if I'm wrong, to Wellington or someone else. But no one's mentioned Waikato here. Waikato had a trial going too, did they not?
Yes, I am not aware of the intricacies of their trial and where their current thinking is up to, but part of our 6-month report will be some benchmarking and comparing it to other New Zealand examples. So we'll be able to provide you with a bit more of a fulsome update of what's going on around New Zealand in this space in the next meeting.
It has turned out to be a Rolls-Royce service, which of course the people know.
Councillor Crowther.
Thank you. Through the chair, Ollie, KPI 4, which is the number of dwellings within 500 metres of a frequent public transport service, which is defined as 15 minutes or less. I'm struggling with that one. I get the Rotorua, which is 0, but 33% of Tauranga. I'm just trying to think my way through the city and tried to plot it out a little bit, and I'm trying to understand, is this the route, like each particular route is 15 minutes or less frequency, which would, to my understanding, not include many routes, or is this a combination if you are potentially 500 metres on one side of your property, 500 on another, and they go at different times? Because I'm particularly thinking of in one populated area where you've got, I think, the 6th most used service, which is not even a 20-minute frequency, and the 8th most used bus service is not even a 20-minute frequency. So there, you know, it doesn't quite seem right.
Through you, Chair, at your discretion, Councillor Crowther, we have a substantive item coming up in the agenda, looking at our regional public transport plan implementation. So if it's okay with you, can we come back to you during that agenda item?
There'll be no further questions? No. So we have to move that report, I believe. Where are we? Yes, and I'm happy to move that we receive the Arataki report for the 23-24 performance monitoring period. Like a second up. Councillor Nees, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. We then move on to verbal updates, and I think it is
Councillor Isles.
yeah, Councillor Isles.
Thank you, Chair. I've circulated the Pānui update for Waka Eastern Bay, and as you'll see from the beginning, we started this on a limited trial in May of 2023, extending it to a wider public operation from the 18th of August. So just on a year. You'll see the figure there up to the end of August, sorry, up to the date this was printed was 310. We've actually completed for the month of August 320 trips. So starting off from a year ago where we were doing 27 to 320, I think in anyone's language is quite impressive. We also, an update on this, we had 3 vehicles. We recently, or when I say recently, last week, we took delivery of a 4th vehicle, which is a Nissan Vanette, which is also suitable for people with disability to access. October and November of this year, you may recall that we were given a grant by Trust Horizon up to the value of 100,000. So we purchased an LDV fully electric van, which will hopefully be transformed and ready for operation before the end of this year. As I said, we have, we've got 166 registered passengers, of whom 119 of those people have some disability. The total mobility, which we were very grateful to be one of the applicants from Regional Council, it was dated from the 1st of June. We still didn't receive the contract until mid-June, and there's been some teething troubles in getting this up and running, but up until the second year, we've had strong requests for it. Our listing as a total mobility transport provider in Whakatane was added early in September, which will possibly increase demand. Our first total mobility trip was the 16th of July, and we have since completed 18 mobility trips to date. Waka Eastern Bay currently has 13 registered total mobility cardholders, 3 approved total mobility vehicles, and 4 total mobility accredited drivers. As I said, the trips for August, once completed, was 320. We have 2 part-time paid drivers, and we fluctuate from between 9 and 11 volunteer drivers. Again, just listening to the on-demand service that's operated here through Tauranga, I'd ask that possible consideration be given to an on-demand service for the Eastern Bay of Plenty. And just bearing in mind the costs of the public transport service that Regional operate through Whakatane, would this be a possible alternative? Thank you, Chair.
So through you, Mr. Chair, in terms of our contracted services in the Eastern Bay, we are committed to operating those until the end of the current period, which is 2026 off the top of my head. If Regional Council wanted to consider a trial in the Eastern Bay of on-demand, that could be considered through the annual planning process.
Okay. Just noting that the services to the Whakatane area are quite expensive from a per passenger per trip basis for us, so it would make sense for us to have a look at whether there's a place for smaller buses going, whether it's on demand or not. We might need to review the size of the buses or something, but I'm sure the financials will play a part in the decision making going forward.
Thank you, Chair. I think, previously we've considered the reduced size of the buses, and that's sort of been, viewed as an indicator that perhaps the service isn't that well patronised. So that was a very big reason, I think, why smaller buses were considered.
Councillor Neves.
Oh, thank you. This is a question for you, councillor. I had a call probably about 3 weeks ago from a resident of Te Puke asking about the ability of the regional council to fund the sort of service that you're providing, and I did give them your name. I indicated that we had contracts and that we weren't in the position to be able to consider the sort of service that you're providing in Whakatane. But did they ever follow up with you and talk to you about that?
I've heard nothing, Councillor Neves, but again, having said that, it may well have been that they directed the inquiry directly to our office, to Renee Lube, the Executive Officer, but I'll follow up if you wish to see if there's been any outcome. Yes.
There was obviously interest for a round within Te Puke small van service to help people to doctor's appointments and things like that. So I just put them through to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions. We'll okay. Let's move on to the chairman's report. 10.1, page 60.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I will just cover the salient points in this report. To start with, many of you will be aware that there are some significant funding constraints following the recent announcements of the next period of the National Land Transport Fund. So broadly for Regional Council, we get 51% funding for many of the activities that we undertake in this space from that fund. In terms of public transport, we received just over $16 million less over the next 3-year period than we requested. So that's a 13% reduction. What I would say is that we did have plans to scale our public transport services offering. So whilst it is a 13% reduction in what we've asked for, initial analysis undertaken by staff has shown that for our core services, there is still sufficient money to keep those services operating. We are not moving into a period of immediate cost cutting in that space, but clearly a number of the improvements that we'd hope to bring to you over the next 3 years will need to be reconsidered. We will need to review our programme and consider alternative sources of funding. Public transport infrastructure, so this is broadly a complete pass-through to territorial local authorities to undertake bus shelter maintenance. That category was fully funded. Road safety, we reported to the Regional Transport Committee that we received about 60% less than was requested in this category. But I would note on this that the Regional Council chose not to budget for local share through the long-term plan. So the proposal is to not engage in regional road safety programmes in the way we have done historically, but we will still be reporting progress made at a TLA level to the Regional Transport Committee. So just for this committee to note. Low cost, low risk. We had a relatively significant reduction compared to what we asked for here, so only 72%. 72% of what we requested for was not funded. So just for your information, the only funding that we've had in the low cost, low risk category is to enable us to complete the on-demand trial in Tauranga South. There's currently nothing else in that pot. Just looking wider to projects that may have implications for public transport. So I mentioned previously that funding has been granted for improvements in the Torrent Road 15th Avenue corridor, which will bring significant benefits to public transport, given that it is one of the most constrained corridors for us in the city of Tauranga. But I do note that currently there isn't funding available for Cameron Road Stage 2, which is probably our second biggest hotspot for congestion on our Tauranga network at present. So moving through the rest of the Chair's report, we wanted to bring to your attention today developments that have been made on our website. And I'll invite Ange and Prue to come up and talk to you a bit more about the exciting developments there.
Tēnā koutou. I'm Ange Foster, the Communications and Engagement Manager at Regional Council, and I'm here with Prue Seism, who is the Communications Operations Team Leader, and she's been project managing the development of the new Bay Bus website, which is what we're here to talk to you about today. So I'll start with a couple of slides and a bit of an update on the project, and then Prue's going to take a demonstration through the website, which we're very excited about. So it's been in the work plan for quite a while. So we're very excited to be close to launch, and all going to plan. We should be launching the end of this week. So why are we redeveloping the Bay Bus website? In current website years, it's about 9 years old. So in website terms, that's very old. It doesn't adhere to best practice, so it's not sort of connected or data driven. The accessibility is very low, and overall the user experience could be better. From an efficiency angle, for staff, it requires a lot of double handling because the timetables don't use the GTFS data. So tracking changes through the process is quite difficult and ad hoc. There's no sort of automation in the back end with the data. And overall, the user experience is quite poor. Like I mentioned, there's no templates for information like service alerts, and it takes a lot of clicks to get the information you need, which is never what you're looking for on a website. Also, when you want to do journey planning, it pushes users away from the site to Google, which is also not best practice on a website. So the new site, it's all about the customer. It's got a whole bunch of new functionality, which is really going to kind of improve that experience for bus users. It provides a number of different ways for the user to get the information they need based on how they want to get their information. It's data driven, so it's connected up to the sort of one source of truth of data that our timetable information is now based on. So that eliminates the potential for there to be differences between the print and the online tables. And all trip info and stop info and live tracking is based on that same data. The user experience is at the heart, so a significant component of the project is involved around we looked at the user research and testing to make sure we're getting it right from the start. And we've partnered with a company called Soma to develop the website. And the reason I want to highlight that is Soma developed Metlink's website in Wellington. So we were able to get a lot of efficiencies and kind of piggyback off a lot of the development that they'd already done with Metlink, which has been really advantageous for us. And we can also therefore look at sort of future development work in the future as well. So that's been really helpful. And yeah, they've been great to work with. They basically provided us with a base product that we could then, apply to the Bay of Plenty. So we're ready to launch this week. We will be doing a soft launch, which I think is just a safe way to do it with a website. And then we'll be looking to do more promotion sort of in the coming months. But we have got some sort of notices on the existing website, and there'll be a notice on the new website. And we're very excited about it. I'm going to hand over to Prue, who can sort of talk you through the real live website.
Thank you for having me. So this is our new website. As you can see, it's maybe just a little teeny bit difficult to see on the bright screen up there, but it's a lot cleaner, it's a lot less in your face than the current website. And as Ange said, it's all about the customer and helping them get from A to B when they need to. So I'll just take you through a few little features. It is going to be a site where it is at a completely different end of the spectrum to what our current site is. So users are going to have a different experience, and we know that, but we hope that it's a really, really awesome experience for them. So I think one of the key things around using a website is you know where you want to go. So the easiest way that we can do that is to put an address in. And we've got this up here. So for me, if I want to go home at the end of the day on a bus towards where I live, where people put the address in, I have turned off location tracking right now just because of the way our networks work, and it was going to completely ruin the experience. So normally if you've got that turned on, it'll actually populate your location in there, so it's a really, really quick process for you. But if I just quickly type in Elizabeth Street and click on there and click on Find My Routes, it will automatically pop up with all the next few routes that I could possibly want to take. I can then click through, say, oh, this is the next route that's available for me. And it will tell me, just like that usual tracking experience that people have on other websites, what I need to do. It will tell me where I need to walk, which bus I need to take, and all of the good stuff. So that's one really, really simple way. Another really easy way is to, some people just like to see a timetable, and that's fine. We have some menus up the top here. If I click on timetables, you can see that everything is broken down first regionally across the top. So we do cater for everyone across the region. Plus, we've deliberately pulled out the Tauranga schools at this point because we know that that is one area where we have a lot of use in the timetable space, and also our regional routes. And then, for example, I'm in the Tauranga and Western Bay space, so I can click into here and find the timetable that I like. Route 62 is one I'm very familiar with, so I'll show you this. And so you can see what happens here. Now, a really cool feature about this is that this, along the top here, you'll see it shows all of our timing stops, we call them. But if you want to see every single stop on that route, it's as simple as clicking a button, and then you can actually see the stops that apply to you. Now, if I just show fewer stops, say I've got a stop that I know I use every day, I can type in here and go, okay, so I want to, there is one on Waihi Road, Julia Road, and it will actually add that into my timetable here. If this is, you'll see that some of these stops here have got a slightly different colour little stop button. That's because I've favorited those. So, for example, if I click into a stop here, and this is just one way to get to this information, I can see every single departure through that stop for the next wee while. And I think it's the next 3 departures per route for that stop. I can see based on what I'm seeing here. Scheduled means that this is information that's coming from the timetable, or perhaps that trip hasn't started yet. Knowing that this is in Grey Street, which is very close to the start of the routes. But this route 2 is due in 6 minutes, and I can see that that's coming from live tracking because it has a little live button there. If there were, if I just take us back a couple of steps, if we knew that a particular trip within this route had been cancelled on that day, we can actually put that in as alert, and if someone is checking the timetable, they will see it here struck out, so they know that that particular trip isn't one that they should be taking, which is an added bonus. I mentioned service alerts. If I hop back here and choose route 2, I know that's got some alerts loaded into it. throughout the site, depending on where you are and how you're looking at things, you can see alerts in different ways. So one way is on a timetable, and this has got one alert, you can click on it, and it shows you all the information that you need about that. If there's an image, we'll include that. If there's a link to somewhere else, we'll include that. This is all data driven as well. So again, different parts of the website link. So it might be that as a stop is impacted, which it is here. So we will also have an alert if someone clicks into that stop on the map on the site, so they can see that it's applicable to them there. Shows the routes. And it just links through to all our various systems to make it a lot easier for the user. I think those are the key features. There's a lot of other information that sits in here. Some of that content around using the bus, making it easier and more comfortable for people to get on the bus. We've got our accessible transport information, and of course we've also got comprehensive fare tables and information. One piece I haven't shown you, which I quickly will, is this site also incorporates live tracking. So that is one of those really key pieces of information people love to see when they're using the bus. How far away is my bus? So by going through the timetables and clicking through, you can see here that these are all the buses currently running on Route 2. This is all taken for the first three you see there. That's all taken from live tracking on the buses. The trips slightly below that are the ones where they might not have started yet. So that's just based on the timetable information. But again, it's automatically picking up and telling the user that one bus is early, one bus is late, and one bus is right on time. So
Yeah, I think just one more comment, I think I skipped over in my slide, is that it's a responsive design, which is, you know, what you need in a website, but it's much more responsive than the existing site. So you can view it on your mobile and you can access all of this information really easily, whether you're on a mobile or tablet, whatever, it will work and it'll get you the information you need to make it easier to catch a bus. That's all. If you have any questions. Yeah.
Right.
First of all, congratulations as a user of the current website. That one looks great. I look forward to using it. Just a couple of questions. The live tracking, so the current system is notoriously unreliable, I found. Buses just disappearing, that sort of stuff. And I presume that's something to do with the hardware on the buses. Has that been sorted out? Obviously the data into this is only as good as what comes off the GPS system.
Through you, Chair, I'll take this question. So our current system uses the same inputs as the new system. The challenge with the current way that we display information is it's not clear whether the information you're seeing is scheduled for real time. So a lot of our customers see the scheduled trip and then the bus doesn't turn up. But what is not clear is that in real time that trip hasn't started or has been cancelled. What this does is makes it much clearer where that information is coming from and makes the service alerts much more transparent for the users. At the moment they are there, but they're buried quite deep within either the website or the transit app, so it's not particularly intuitive for the user as to exactly what's going on. So something that we really want to rectify with the new platform.
Thank you. I look forward to that. Sorry, and one last question. Do you have any plans to have push alerts come out to people? That maybe if they've saved a bus stop, it might send the alert to them automatically?
that's something that we made a call early on to not do just yet. It would have involved having to have user logins, which we have put on hold for now, with some other work that we know is happening in the future with things like NTs. So it's not to say it won't happen, but it doesn't happen for this website. Yeah.
Councillor Curry.
So given most regular users like commuters or people that regularly take a bus to a supermarket destination, for the more discretionary user, wouldn't they just simply go to Google Maps for this information, and how do you capture them in terms of those casual users?
I think that's probably going to be part of future promotional work and planning. the focus, I think, for the next few weeks will be on making sure that the current users are aware of the change. And then this can be built into a broader campaign around a whole lot of other kind of ways of how and why people might want to use the bus.
Furthermore, you mentioned like either a desktop or a mobile use. So it's not an app on the mobile, it's just the website accessible on the mobile, but it's mobile friendly.
It's absolutely mobile friendly, and users can easily save the site as a button on their home screens, and it works exactly like an app. The mobile interface actually looks slightly different, so it isn't just a smaller version of the website. It's actually made to work for a smaller device.
Councillor Mays?
Thank you. Will this replace the transit app? What do you expect that people will use this in preference to the transit app? Because I've never found that particularly easy to use.
Daily commuter with the transit app here, so I agree. I think we have parked that decision to just get this launched, get the numbers, get the stats, look at the analytics, and then we can make that evaluation a little bit down the line. But that's kind of the thinking that we have. But we wanted to sort of test this before going all in and doing too much change at once, because there are, certain users that are using the app and it's working. So let's not remove that for now.
So what functionality does the transit app have that this doesn't? Is it a push alert?
Through the chair, just a continuation of Angie's answer. We're very aware that over the next 12 to 18 months, there's going to be significant change with the NCS platform coming live. So what we didn't want to do was over-commit for this project and then have to revisit and spend more money on retrofitting NCS into this. So as part of that NTS journey, understanding how our local technology supports that, we'll consider the suitability of the transit app as being the application by which people would interact in that way. Transit does have some ability to do push notifications and that sort of stuff, but it's just not tailored to us in the way that a sort of a white label or something developed specifically for us would be. But as I say, the main reason we haven't gone down that road at the moment is we really want to understand the NTS requirements before we commit dollars to development.
Councillor Thurston?
My question was around the National Land Transport Fund. You might want to exhaust questions on the website first.
Any further questions on the website? Thank you, staff.
Okay, go. In terms of the National Land Transport Fund and the Regional Transport Committee, I think it's fair to say there was considerable angst and grief on behalf of some of our TLAs in the Bay of Plenty as to what they received in terms of what was requested and what was actually received. I think it's fair to say that Tauranga and the Western Bay did reasonably well. They may not think so, but I can tell you they did. But in terms of the Eastern Bay and Rotorua in particular, as I said, there was, in my opening comments, there was considerable grief. So apropos of all of that, we've got a roadshow come round table next week, going to both Rotorua and Whakatane, Her Worship's hosting a round table that we'll all be at next Friday in Rotorua. But I just wanted to ask Councillor Isles and Councillor Dennis, are you aware of us bringing this monolith to Whakatane on Tuesday, being hosted by His Worship the Mayor?
No, this is the first we're hearing of it.
Okay,
Thanks.
so it's to brief you guys on what could have been done better, what we all need to do going forward for the next round, but I'll give you the details over morning tea. Okay, thanks, Chairman.
Councillor Nees?
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions on the other part of the report, not the website, and that was the fact that the Papamoa Park and Ride has not been funded through NZTA, and I think our funding was subject to NZTA funding. So just to ask Tauranga City Council what you are intending to do about that, because I think we were thinking if it wasn't funded by NZTA, we wouldn't be funding it either.
I'm happy to respond. I think the answer is we don't know. I've asked for information about that, haven't got that yet, but I'm sure it's coming. But I think it's just part of a range of projects that, and you know, staff from City Council, I think Mike's was there, can chip in, but my understanding is there'll be a list of things that weren't funded that we have to make decisions on around whether they're funded solely by us or whether we look for external funding somewhere else or whatever.
And just one further question, your decision, recent decision about Cameron Road Stage 1 and the bus lanes, could you explain what the implications of that are for the bus service, please?
Initially, it was largely around consultation with the businesses, and I know originally the design was that the bus lanes would be operative. It was felt that the businesses hadn't been advised that it was going to change suddenly. I think it had been delayed for 6 months, so it was just to give us more breathing space and to make sure that we did actually consult properly with the users and the businesses down Cameron Road. So it wasn't actually saying we weren't going to do it. It was just giving us breathing space to assess the situation.
So it could still occur that we are able to provide priority lanes for the buses, because it's that that's going to give us the jump on the congestion.
That can still happen. Obviously, with stage 2 of Cameron Road not going ahead, we also wanted to know whether we were still going to get the same benefit by only opening up half of it.
Councillor Crowther.
You just on that, I see in under 2.3 it says a further report to be provided to TCC in February 24, I presume it's 2025. I was under the impression that we were going to get something before then, so I am wondering whether that can be brought forward. So I'll ask that question of our staff, but I don't think there was a view that we wanted to slow it down. It was more just that we wanted more information. So if time is of the essence, perhaps we can have that conversation a little bit quicker, I would hope.
Just a point of clarification, that is a typo.
Thank you. So what's not mentioned in there is the move by central government to require us to get a better no shift ratio, you know, for fare recovery. Do you want to talk about that at all? Because it's of major significance to this committee.
Yeah, through you, Chair. We do hint at it through item 2.2, the public transport framework. We'll caveat this by saying that the government and NZTA have not come out with a firm position on this, so that the policy, especially the operational policy, is very much in development. But it's been fairly clearly signalled through the GPS, as well as the information that was distributed with the announcements around the NLTF, that there will be an expectation that fare loss recovery for public transport increases over the term of this government. We're yet to have a target assigned to us, but our understanding is that we will be given a target, and our understanding is that target will be developed in consultation with NZTA to make sure that target is both challenging for us, but also realistic. I mentioned that staff have begun a review of fares across the region. And we've already had a workshop with the Regional Council, and there's a workshop with members of this committee later today to bring you up to speed on where staff have got to with that process and seek your further guidance.
And that noting that the discusses further in the workshop, one of the questions I did have was, it is a government directive, I think it says, and talking about a target, but what teeth does that actually have? Are they going to pin funding on achieving this, or how do they enforce this? Because it's aspirational, but we all know how hard it is to increase fare box recovery, and there's an element of if you push it too hard, you'll kill the whole thing. So what is the teeth to achieve that?
Through you, Chair, as I say, we're still awaiting the guidance and operational policy for exactly what the benefits and risks around meeting or not meeting that target will be. My assumption, my opinion, is that performance in this period of the NRTF may drive the level of funding in the next. So I imagine that will be the carrot / the stick.
If it's not carefully done, it could just cause a death spiral of public transport, which I don't think anyone around the table would want to see, where you have to keep increasing prices and getting less and less usage and less funding from government, which is not good enough.
Councillor Neave.
Just to comment on that fare box recovery, I know it's not just fares that we can get the funding from, it's other sources of revenue that they're including. So I really hope our strategy is looking very hard on all other sources of revenue, for example, using the buses and advertising avenue, getting sponsorship, all sorts of things, because I think I'm very aware of the price sensitivity of our people that live here, and also I'm very aware that the reason that we provided peak free travel for school children was to try and mitigate the congestion pressures that were being felt in Tauranga. So to the point where people would say when there is no school and the kids are on holiday, it's a breeze to move around. So it was an incentive to try and encourage parents to put their children on the school bus rather than run them to school themselves. And what I don't want is for us to go backwards and really make the congestion problem in Tauranga so much worse. So every avenue of funding other than or every lever that we can push other than fares, I'd be encouraging staff to look at.
Thank you. Councillor Crowther.
Question through the chair on the funding allocation again. I'm trying to get my head around the different numbers. So we've got on a graph it shows about 180 million was planned for the 3 years for PT services. Then we applied for 128 million and got 112. Presumably that's the total cost of those services. Then we've got within the NLTP itself, it has 66 million of presumably NZTA funding for public transport services. And then I noticed this past year we had a total budget of 39 for the services and 12 for the other public transport operations, which meant 51 million before the subsidy. So I'm just trying to get my head around if you take 3 years at the current cost, we're talking about 150 mil total. It was planned to go to 180, but then I see this number of 112 and I'm trying to figure out in my head how the heck we can tally those numbers.
Through you, Chair, you've struck on the complexities of transport budgeting and funding arrangements. And it is an incredibly complex thing. What I would say is there are various pots of money within the NRTF. So the four here are effectively the four pots which go towards the continuous programme. On top of that, we also have our improvements programme budget, which is what comes out of the projects contained within the RLTP. When the numbers you're quoting, I assume a lot of those come from our Arataki report. That will be a blend of all of those pots. So it's very challenging to do a like-for-like comparison between those. Believe me, behind the scenes over the past couple of weeks, staff have been working through the detail of that to make sure that there are enough dollars in the public transport services continuous programme pot to run current levels of service. So that's the first number that we've really focused on making sure that we can reconcile. The implications for the wider programme and assumed improvement projects and whatnot that make it into the budgets that you see in the Arataki reports. That's kind of the next phase of understanding the next steps for us. So I'm hoping that over the next couple of meetings that we'll be able to demystify the funding a bit for you, noting the complexities there.
Thank you very much. I think that'd be really helpful. That sort of funding stack or whatever you call it would be, I think, helpful to us to understand where we're tight and where we've got still room to offer what we need to offer.
Through you, Chair, the simple way of summing it up is any improvements on what we currently operate, we are tight on. That's the summary.
And I think the previous discussion on fair recovery is pretty pertinent. If we want to get long-term funding from central government, we actually have to show some responsibility. I remember when I first chaired Transport back in the early 2000s, the fair recovery was sitting at around 30%, and we were told we had to get it closer to 50, and we never managed to, and it slowly slipped, and we're now one of the worst fair recovery, if not the worst, in the country. I think it's regionally around 13%, off the top of my head. And so our short-term goal, just informally with NZTA, is to get it back to 2018 levels at around 25%. So there's some hard questions. We actually have to look very carefully at how we are going to fund public transport going forward, because the last thing we want is to not get really strong support from central government. And so it's the responsibility of us all to, and that's why this the fair review workshop is the first step, and we've got to take that really seriously, in my view. Any further comments, questions on the chairman's report? If not, I'll move the report to be received, seconded by Councillor Thurston. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Move to.
If I could just have a point of clarification, Chair, in response to Councillor Taylor's question on our CapEx budget under the Arataki report. Staff have come back to me. We had budgeted to undertake a project that looked at improving our data sources and effectively pull those together into one system. So at the moment, we operate across a lot of different systems for our KPI monitoring, finances, all that sort of stuff. So we had budgeted to develop some software to pull those together to improve that. That project has been delayed because there wasn't staff resource available in the last quarter to progress that project. So that's why that was budgeted but not realised.
Yeah, let's do the membership.
Move the recommendations 1 to 3, Chairman.
Being moved, I'll allow that to be moved.
Good debate.
Thanks. Just through you again, my name is Michael Patrick. I'm a Senior Transport Planner here at the Regional Council. Next to me is Steve Broom, Governance Manager here, again at the Regional Council. The purpose of this paper is just to advise PTC of the changes in membership. It's pretty light. So following obviously the council elections recently, we have new TCC representatives for the PTC. Those are Councillor Crowder, Councillor Taylor, and the alternate member, Councillor Curate. So welcome to you three. For NZ Transport Agency or Wakatahi, that person for the membership is now Gary Maloney as the alternate member. So the recommendations for this report, just noting the new members of the PTC committee, as I mentioned, from Tauranga City Council, and noting the new alternate member for NZ Transport Agency being Gary Maloney. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy to move, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, you're happy to second? Oh, it's been moved there.
Okay, yeah.
Councillor Thurston moved, second, Mayor, Denia, all those in favour, please say aye. No, anyone opposed to these new? There be none. Welcome. So that we're getting complaints from morning tea, but let's want to group this up for now. Okay, let's reconvene this meeting and I pass over to Ollie and Matthew.
Through you, Chair, just me on this one.
Oh, sorry, Ollie.
So the paper before you relates to the regional tertiary commuter services that we currently operate. So historically, these services came about as a trial and were funded through our low cost, low risk funding pot. And they were underpinned by a funding model. So that saw NZTA contribute 51%, and then the remainder contributed by the regional council, but also to tertiary institutes that these services cater for, Toi Wahomai and the University of Waikato. Through the recently announced NLTF, it was announced that funding for these services from NZTA would cease. And that leaves a funding hole for the provision of these services to the tune of $218,000 per year. Staff have undertaken an options review of these services. So what we have considered is retaining the services. So that would drive the additional regional council contribution, assuming that we retained the contribution that our tertiary institutes currently provide. I would note that we've been in discussion with the tertiary institutes for a fair while, and as of today, we have not received a commitment from either institute to continue funding these services. So I think it's safe to assume that if you wanted to retain these services, that regional council may need to foot the cost of $544,000 by our estimate. The other thing that staff have looked at is rationalising the service. So what other services are operated that could potentially be tweaked to pick up some of this demand. You'll see in the table presented under heading 3.2 that the only real service that we can fully mitigate is Katikati to Tauranga, a 103 service. The others, either there's very limited opportunity to mitigate, or there is no alternative service that we can offer. The third option that staff considered is to cease the service. As part of this, staff did a review of the levels of demands that are being carried on these 5 services. You'll see under item 2.3 that whilst patronage has grown over the years that these services have been offered, the utilisation, so the number of seats occupied, does remain relatively low. We average 5.7 passengers per trip, or 41 passengers across 5 services a day. To put that into specifics, so Katikati to Tauranga, we average 4 passengers per trip, and the highest utilised service, the 101, the Whakatane to Tauranga, is just over 6.5 passengers per day. That has led to the staff recommended option that we cease these services at the end of the calendar year, and that is the recommendation that forms the resolutions in front of you. You'll be aware that there isn't a financial delegation to this committee, so what staff are seeking is your direction in terms of ceasing these services, and then the direction given by this committee will then be recommended to the regional council for consideration at the next practical meeting.
Councillor you finished? Councillor Thurston?
Chairman, I'm happy to move the recommendations with considerable regret. It is a trial, as the officers have explained. We pumped oxygen into this for years. Particularly from my perspective, was to give marginalised communities like Murupara and Kaingaroa some sort of access to tertiary education once they left secondary education. It's an incredibly sad day, but I think we've exhausted our communication lines with Waikato and also with the Polytech. But I would certainly hope somewhere within the recommendations that we could have another clause that says that communication continues and is ongoing. So hopefully they change their stance at some time, but it's not sustainable. The numbers are woeful, as the officers have explained, and I think that's about all I can say. It's a funding gap for the regional council of $280,000 that our ratepayers have to pick up. And when you're talking 5 and 6 students in some cases, sadly, I think they're going to have to find alternative arrangements. But no, an incredibly sad day for access to tertiary education in the Bay of Plenty. Thanks, Chairman.
Through you, Chair, just in response to that, happy for the communications to form part of the resolution, but just noting that staff have included that as the next steps following this paper to undertake communications with customers and tertiary institutes. The other thing that I didn't mention in my preamble was that there is a precedent for tertiary institutes providing services privately. And you'll see under heading 3.3 that there is a number of services that both institutes operate already within the Bay of Plenty and across the hill to Waikato as well. So if the tertiary institutes felt that there was a need to continue these services for their students, there is a precedent for them doing that without our support.
Councillor Lees.
Well, I'm just happy to second, Mr. Chair. Sadly, but you know, we're in a different environment now, and we've got to start being a bit fiscally responsible with the cost of our services. So regretfully, I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Gloria, just asking if you want to see a separate resolution for next steps, or are you happy with it?
I think we're happy for the staff to encapsulate something there that's appropriate, but essentially just leaves the door open with regards to the 2 key facilities that we've been negotiating with over all these years.
Thank you. Councillor Isles.
Thank you, Chair. Just referring to the Murupara service in particular, has there been any contact made with local iwi, Ngāti Manawa and Ngāti Whare, to see if they're, through their iwi vans, whether they're able to provide a service for these students? And secondly, what sort of number are we talking about? Have you any idea? I mean, I know this is 2024 stats, so going forward into the new year, maybe.
So in relation to 104, so that's the service from Murupara to Rotorua, that average is 4.9 passengers per trip. To answer your question about engagement with iwi, staff have not engaged. That's certainly something that we can follow up on if it's your wish to see if they do have the resources to provide an alternative service.
Thank you. And if all that fails, if it comes back to Whaka Eastern Bay to see if we may be able to step in and bridge that gap.
Chairman, we have had, I commend the Councillor Winters and myself having quite extensive conversations with Murupara Area School. And I know I think we negotiated to pick up 1 student at Kaingaroa on the main road to Murupara, but these are the levels, Councillor, that we're dealing with. They're not big numbers.
Fully appreciate it, and once again, that's why I say possibly our Whaka Eastern Bay can fit into that bridge if iwi aren't able to.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through the chair. Thank you for the report Bettina put it together. I'm actually very concerned also about, if I can talk of some of the concerns Councillor Thurston and these particular brought up, but also the timing. We're looking late September now. I take it the decision will come up sometime in October. You know, for a lot of these people now to suddenly their availability for courses, it's going to be a very tight time frame. I'm actually quite concerned at how we've sort of, I don't mean to say left them in the lurch, but we've certainly limited some options. Personally, I would like to have seen this carry on for a wee bit longer, but I do appreciate the fiscal issues that we all face, but certainly have a lot of concerns over this. Thank you.
So through you, Chair, we absolutely would have hoped to have been able to bring this to your attention earlier to allow for that more fulsome communications with the community. What I would say is that we've been in fairly lengthy discussions, trying to understand whether the tertiary institutes want to remain committed to the trial. And that process has taken a long time. And as I say, as of today, we don't have any formal commitment from them. I guess for us, the thing that pushed this to the point where we needed to bring it to you today was the announcement of 3 weeks ago, where we found that our 51%, our majority funding partner, has also pulled out of this arrangement. So yes, it is for those mitigating circumstances that this is coming to you so late in the piece. But as I said to Councillor Thurston, we will try and do the best we can in the communication space to make sure that once a final decision has been made by the regional council, assuming that at that point the service is confirmed to be ceased, that we get the message out as quickly as we can to allow people to plan for the next academic year.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just have a supplementary. Has there been any look at whether the students could be charged to make a contribution? Because this isn't in the city, this is over quite a wide distance. And I think it would only be fair that they would be asked to make a contribution over a much wider travel distance.
So through you, Chair, yes. So we took this to regional council some months ago, and we were planning to start charging students from the start of the next academic year. The numbers that are in the report here in terms of the shortfall, they actually assume that the passengers do contribute revenue. So those numbers assume us collecting an amount of fare box recovery. So yes, that has been incorporated into this.
Councillor Browder.
One comment and then a question. The comment is just that we seem to have an option for people who really need it to go from Tauranga to Rotorua, which, although it's not as convenient to get to tertiary locations, it is possible to do that at a reasonable time in the morning and a reasonable return time in the afternoon. The other way around, I'm on the Intercity website now, and you have to leave at 2:25 a.m. in order to get to Rotorua from Tauranga by 11:40 a.m, which would be probably a bit late for most tertiary people. So the suggestion is there any way that, given the lack of extra funding, that the regional council could potentially have a conversation with Intercity around the fact that those services are ceasing, and just to sort of alert them in case there is a possibility that there is a collective demand that they might be able to sort of tweak some timetables at some point. The other one, which is probably more in your scope to do something, is the Katikati option. So one of your staff, I'd actually met with a group of people in Katikati, I think some of you know, on the committee, and one of the regional council staff was there, and again, it was a funding issue that you couldn't actually initiate something, but I'm looking at the timing of that Katikati service is actually quite convenient, I think, for a lot of commuters who may, for whatever reason, want to catch a bus. Is it possible to juggle the timing of the services there? Because my understanding from that community is that the services don't meet the needs of that community, and this was possibly one of the better timed services. And given that you will have presumably reduce a lot of cost and potentially have a little bit of wriggle room there, can you actually juggle that money around to get a better outcome for the people in Katikati and ultimately Waihi Beach hopefully as well?
So through you, Chair, we do have, well, in our historic programme, we did have a Western Bay review / network refresh. So one thing that would be considered as part of that project would be recasting the timetable and assessing whether the timetable is working both for the user but also allows the efficient operation of those services. With the recast of our programme that we're having to go through at the moment, I can't give a firm commitment either way as to where that project will land in our new programme. But obviously, if there's a market there that we could service with public transport, it would be within our interests to try and shift the service to meet the needs of those people. You'll note under section 3.2 of the report, where we looked at rationalising the service, The Katikati service and the Omopara service as well do go into Tauranga CBD, so do provide that continued connection to the University of Waikato campus. The challenge is that there isn't sufficient time in the current timetable to then extend that service out to the Windermere campus of Tuahaumai. The challenge there is that service is operated with very few vehicles. So when staff looked at that to provide that extension, you would need to bring an additional vehicle into that service, which would inject significant additional OPEX into that. But I do note that we run 55 up Cameron Road, and there is a good transfer available. So there is still a connection to the Waikato campus, but it does require students to change services in Tauranga CBD.
Just a bit of anecdotal evidence. Yesterday at 5:20, I walked up Elizabeth Street with my dog, and there was one person on the Katikati bus going back to Katikati. One person on a big bus. Sure.
I think my understanding from the Katikati people that I've spoken to is that that's because the service doesn't run at an appropriate time. And I guess rather than go through the Western Bay refresh, having lived through the Tauranga refresh, it takes time. I'm thinking, given you're actually scrapping a bus service, which costs money, given they want timing juggled, couldn't that be fast tracked rather than go through a proper refresh? Couldn't it be just a decision made to go to regional council and put a proposal of what the morning schedule should be for the Katikati commuter service?
Through you, Chair. So we do talk about the potential mitigations in this report. What staff could do is beef up the potential mitigations within current budget for the report that goes to the regional council. We can take that away and see what options we have. I can't give you a commitment either way here today, because it might be that bus asset is off doing something else which drives the current time. So I would like to take the opportunity to look into that in more detail.
Any, Councillor Isles?
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the recommendations to both the committees, do we need a third one there, that there will be a follow-up with, as Oliver's indicated on a couple of those questions now? Do we need that certainty, or is it a given that that will happen? That there will be follow-ups, like I suggested, perhaps with iwi in Murupara, and also the issues have been raised by Councillor Crowther. Will there be a follow-up? Because both these recommendations basically say ceases at the end of 2024, end of story.
Through you, Chair, I'd say that's at the discretion of the community. Staff can give you an undertaking to go away and do those, but if you would like to see that formalised in the resolution, we can certainly have that in. I would leave that up to the discretion of the committee.
I'm happy with the second mover and seconder would like a third.
Go from.
Just give us some words, would you? Does that satisfy you, mover and seconder? So, forward.
It doesn't cover the investigation of timetabling alternatives for the Katikati commuter. Perhaps if we could add something in for that. Service to Tauranga, perhaps. Thanks.
Sorry, Chair, could I just ask, so does that include also continuing the conversations with, say, Toiwamai and Rotorua? That staff said they're happy for conversations to still continue?
It does. It says tertiary commuter service, so that's
Services, as in Rotorua?
services, yeah.
Thank you.
Chair, do we have to be Pacific and put Minnepah in that recommendation as well? Was that?
Up to the mover and seconder, but I wouldn't have thought, I think you get the intent, and
Just add the word regional for all regional tertiary commuter services.
Thank you.
all right? It's been moved and seconded with that amendment. Any discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Against? One, do you want your against noted? Okay, it's adopted. Carried. Thank you, we move on. Page 74, bus user and non-user survey.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Bron Healy. I'm presenting this report today. So in essence, this report reports on the most recent results of bus user and non-user surveys in the Bay of Plenty. This is an important piece of information. It both enables the Regional Council to meet its commitments to Waka Kotahi in terms of reporting on key metrics, and that's related to our investment that we could get from the national agency. It also provides an important piece of information for us to measure how we're doing in terms of the user experience in the Bay of Plenty, and make adjustments to our service accordingly. So yeah, the survey uses an established methodology to sort of work out customer satisfaction with various aspects of the service. It also is replicable, so we are able to measure trends over time and changes in perceptions. So some of the key findings in the report are in the executive summary, and there's some pretty, some encouraging results from the surveys. User satisfaction with public transport overall has increased from 68% in 2022 up to 76% in 2024. More passengers are inclined to recommend the local bus service, with the percentage increasing from 70% 2 years ago to 76% this year. There is also an increased familiarity with the transit app and use of it. So the majority of local bus users are aware of their app, and many use it. And there's also, some rich information in terms of suggested improvements to the service. So the key ones, common themes that come through a lot of the surveys, which is increased service frequency and improved service reliability. So those are a couple of the key aspects of service quality that we're continuously working on and trying to improve. There was also a significant increase in suggestions to enable technology that tracks progress of buses, provides live updates. As we've seen in earlier items, we've got our new website upgrade, and there's also the existing transit app. And obviously we've also had some discussion about the accuracy of that information and how that is generated. So the surveys also ask questions of non-users, so that allows us to identify what are the barriers to using public transport for those people that don't currently use it. And convenience is cited as the key theme coming through responses. There's a substantial amount of detail in the appended report, but I'm happy to take any questions back from members.
Ron, is it I noticed there's a decrease in the awareness or use of B cards. Is it awareness? I don't remember. In your report, and I would have thought that would be something that we should be really encouraging. I know we're going to move to a new system, but that is a topic that could come up in the fair review to actually differentiate between cash and the B card, because I think from a safety angle for the drivers as well as our ability to track data, it's essential that we get people to use the cards.
So through you, Chair, the reduction in awareness of the B card is amongst non-bus users. What I would say is that non-bus users, it's been a challenging sector of the market for us to survey. Generally speaking, these interviews are done over the phone, and it is very hard to get a large sample size. It is quite difficult to read into the specific data amongst our non-user surveys. What I would say is, because we, on balance, feel that we don't get significant value out of the non-user surveys compared to the user surveys, staff will canvass Regional Council about this through the long-term planning process. So we are actually not going to continue with our non-user surveys beyond this point, because we didn't feel that they were providing us with the rich data compared to the survey of users.
Mayor Denia, followed by Councillor Isles.
A question and a comment, if I may. I'm looking at page 153 and the sample profile, and for the rural western area, it appears that Māori are basically excluded from the survey. I understand you said it's difficult getting people to participate, but that really does seem quite an oversight.
Through you, Chair. So this is undertaken by an external agency on our behalf. They contact as many people as they can, and they try and build up a fair and representative demographic in terms of the responses. But as I say, it has proved challenging to both get responses in significant numbers, to provide valuable information, certainly with the non-users, and as you've noted, get a representative input from across the demographics.
And the comment was, the key point for me is that for rural western, there's no bus service in the area effectively, and that's why people don't use it. And I'm looking forward to, as Councillor Crowther's raised in the previous item, the refresh of the Western Bay bus service, so we can look at improving the service for our communities there.
We're going to Isles first, and then Taylor, and then Neves.
Thank you, Chair. Ron, the survey that was done on rural Whakatane, would that be in an area that is buses circulate, or demographic of where that rural Whakatane survey would have taken place?
Perhaps Ollie might want to answer that one.
So through you, Chair, my understanding is that the methodology is relatively coarse when it comes to surveying non-users. So it will be using publicly available census data to identify people to contact, usually by phone. So my understanding is there's limited sort of analysis of whether those people are within proximity of an existing service.
So is that achieving anything really? Vague, isn't it?
Through you, Chair, I go back to my previous comments. So we've always struggled to get meaningful data out of the non-user survey, and that is why we recommended to the Regional Council that it's not funded going forwards. And we put our resources into understanding feedback from bus users.
supplementary if I may, the observations, I see, rural Western is, truly commented on, but there's nothing there from Eastern Bay. So I guess that's a response to your earlier answer.
So we're going to councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I'm just amazed that we would cease interviewing non-bus users when our whole aim is to actually increase the usage of the buses. Surely, if the phone survey isn't working, there must be another way of doing it. Standing outside a car park when someone's just driven and quizzing them maybe is perhaps a direct way to get some useful information. I just cannot understand why you would drop this.
So through you, Chair, this is not the only way that we gain feedback from our users and non-users. So the reason, the primary reason that the formal user and non-user surveys are undertaken is because there's a NZTA requirement as part of their funding for us to undertake surveys. But I will add that is only to undertake user surveys. What staff do is generally when we are looking to make an improvement on the network, we do go out and we do canvass public opinion at that point. So it is targeted engagement where we will go out to supermarkets, shopping centres, bus interchanges, etc., to canvass the views and opinions of a wide section of society. And there's also the rich information that we get unsolicited through our feedback channels, be that social media or direct through the Baybus channels. So I can assure you this is not the only avenue in which we seek or actively seek feedback from our communities.
Supplemental, just a quick one. So we're doing this survey that we're talking about at the moment on a regular basis, and we use it as a comparative. These other ones you're talking about, are they on the same regularity, or are they hit and miss? What happens with those?
So through you, Chair, the ones I'm talking about are more ad hoc and would more support understanding things at a project level. So if we were going to make a change to a service within a community, we would survey that community, and we use a variety of things. We've got our Participate online platform. We use mail drops where appropriate, and we also put staff out into the community to survey people in a variety of locations.
Councillor Lees.
Thank you. I think firstly I was a little bit disappointed at the lack of recognition that use of buses is better for the environment. That was in the non-user survey that only 14% thought that they were doing good for the environment by taking a bus, or would be doing a good thing for the environment if they were taking a bus. What I was looking at for in the data is some indications about sensitivity to fares and value for money, and I noticed that in Tauranga there's been a drop in the sense that the fares are good value for money, and I presume that's just because of the congestion and the lack of reliability of the service, and they perhaps see taking their own car gives them greater reliability, so therefore it's better value for money, I'm not sure. But on page 121 there's a breakdown by age on the question, fares being good value. And only 56% of 15 to 24-year-olds think the fares are good value. 61% of 25 to 44-year-olds think it's good value. It isn't till you get to the 65 plus who don't pay at all that think that it's really good value. So I just do think that we need to be cognizant of the price sensitivity with regard to fares when we have our discussion this afternoon. And I sort of think it would have been a great opportunity to ask a few more pointed questions on fares. Now I know that we're running a series and we like to compare trends, and so therefore we tend to ask the same questions, but it would have been quite helpful to have a couple of standout questions that just said, you know, what do you think would be a reasonable cost for X journey, for example, to give us a bit of a steer, because I guess my fear is that we will overcorrect the fares to try and increase our fare box recovery, and we will end up reducing our patronage.
Through the chair, I will refresh my memory. We did add in some additional questions to this survey. So we will go through the raw data and understand what we've got in there to supplement projects such as the fare review. What I would say though is, even with the user survey, the number of participants is rather low. And when you break that down into age bands and by demographics, your sample size gets even smaller still. So there is a sort of a lens that you have to put back across this in terms of, is it, when you do break things down to that level, is it a representative sample? Noting that of the 15 to 24 category, a lot of those will qualify for free or very heavily discounted travel. So my observation would be, does that show that the results of this survey are slightly out of kilter with reality, for example? So the devil's in the detail. We can certainly draw on what we've got in the raw data to supplement the fare review process.
Councillor Crowther.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question around the Rotorua satisfaction, which is, the highest in the Bay. Do you sort of see a pattern there at all? I'm struggling to kind of link the way that the services there have not undergone the improvements. Basically, I understand regional council's been thwarted, in trying to do that in terms of funding. But the satisfaction has gone back up nearly to what it was in 2020. And I'm just trying to sort of see whether that's a bit of an aberration in terms of the satisfaction, or whether you see there's something that's going really well in Rotorua and that could be built upon if you manage to get some extra funding. And I kind of compare that to the amount of investment that's gone into the Tauranga network and since 2018. And by comparison, it's a huge chunk of investment, but we're still nowhere near back to where we were with the satisfaction.
So through you, Chair, a lot of my response is going to be anecdotal and reflecting on my own observations. Our community is really hurt through COVID, and many of you will recall we had to make some difficult decisions in terms of significantly reducing our levels of service, predominantly to respond to a national shortage of bus drivers. And that hit Tauranga significantly harder than our other networks, just because of the scale of the operation here. In Rotorua, whilst we did still feel the implications of the driver shortage, because there's much fewer drivers and buses required to run that network, we continue to operate something akin to a full service through that period. So what we've not seen in Rotorua is that significant dive in customer satisfaction due to us offering a significantly degraded service, and then having to live through the rebound as we try and sort of effectively reconfirm our value and our level of service to the community. The other thing in Rotorua is that it doesn't experience the traffic congestion of Tauranga. So generally speaking, the network there is more reliable and more punctual compared to Tauranga. And all routes operate on a half-hourly frequency all day. So generally speaking, whilst we acknowledge that the routing in Rotorua perhaps isn't as efficient as it could be, generally speaking, the level of service is good and consistent. So for those reasons, we have enjoyed higher levels of satisfaction from that community. When you make changes to a network, there is a lagged effect as the community sort of come back to a higher level of service. And I think what we're seeing in Tauranga is, we've only, in the grand scheme of things, relatively recently recovered to something akin to a full timetable post-COVID. So we're still seeing the community re-accept that service, and those satisfaction scores come up. So I think the real test will be, what happens next year when we've been running something akin to a full timetable for a full 12 months, and we get a true like-for-like comparison.
Thank you. Any further questions? Then we'll go back to page. Sorry. Page 74. And we just have to move receives the report, the bus user and non-user surveys. Moved by councillor Crowther, seconded by councillor Isles. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Now, we just have to return to item where you made a third recommendation for the Caddy Cat commuter needs to be changed to the Caddy Cat Express service.
So through you, Chair, just to clarify, we refer to the tertiary services as commuter services, and the scheduled service, so that's Route 80 in this respect, to an express service. So I just wanted to check that the intention of the committee was for staff to look at potential changes to Route 80, which is the Katikati Express service, and just to make sure that that's transparent in what's been resolved.
Sorry to be pedantic, but is this clause 3 actually sitting in the right resolution in terms of all the papers we've received today?
Yeah.
I know the tertiary providers part, but the second part is a whole different subject, is it not? Express commuter services to town.
No, well,
That's in regards to the accessing tertiary services, is it not? I don't know.
but it was as a replace. It was moved and it was agreed that we were going to take out the tertiary, but we're trying to find a way to improve the service for those who might get it. And that, in the Caddy Cat case, it would be through the Caddy Cat Express. That's why it's express.
All good.
Well, maybe if you just add at the end there as a mitigation for the withdrawal of the tertiary service. The caddy's one word, not one.
Read that one now.
What do you like? Relax.
I'm happy.
Everyone, we will require a 75% vote for a change to amend that. So no dissension, please.
God help you if you vote against it.
Yeah. Councillor?
Just before we do we also put that number 3 recommendation onto the Public Transport Committee recommendation to Regional Council?
We don't need to.
You don't need to?
This committee can direct staff to look at that. It's not a funding thing necessarily, so.
So through you, Chair, the proposed approach by staff would be to fold our findings that you've directed us to look at through resolution 3 and fold that into the report that goes to the Regional Council, and then report back to the next meeting of this committee as to what we found.
Right, I'm gonna put the vote. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Yeah. Oh, show of hands, go on then. All in favour? You can't vote. Okay. Against? Carry. We move on to, where we move next.
Page 162.
Oh, yeah. So this is, yeah, Andrew.
As Catherine, who's transport planning, she'll run through this paper.
This is page 162, people.
You Chair, kia ora koutou, ko Katri taku ingoa. So good morning, I'm Katri. I'm one of the transport planners here at Toi Moana.
So I'm here today to present the committee with first implementation and monitoring report on the Regional Public Transport Plan, or the RPTP. I appreciate this is the last item on the agenda. We're running a bit behind on time, so I'll do my best to be brief. So I'm happy to take the paper broadly as read, but would like to take the opportunity to make a few key points and observations. So the report presented to PTC today is the first progress report on the RPTP since the development and adoption of the RPTP action plan in March this year. In summary, the report covers the implementation of 55 actions, as well as the monitoring of 16 key performance indicators, or KPIs, as outlined in the plan. Overall, we've seen good progress being made on the implementation and monitoring of the RPTP. And out of the 55 actions, we've seen 3 of the actions completed, 21 progressing well, 17 slower than anticipated, 6 have been discontinued, and 8 are not currently being progressed. Some of these actions are, however, at risk, as they do not align with the new government's strategic priorities for land transport, and therefore have been impacted by the funding constraints of the National Land Transport Programme, or the NLTP. There are several projects in the RPTP that will be affected and have attracted no funding or reduced funding. Some examples of projects and initiatives impacted by the recent NLTP announcements include a variety of business cases across the Bay of Plenty. These include the Western Bay of Plenty Public Transport Services and Infrastructure business case, the PTS&I, the bus decarbonisation programme, the travel demand management and behaviour change programme, as well as the continuation and expansion of the on-demand service. Going forward, next steps include to continue to improve the implementation and monitoring of the RPTP, to continue to identify and fill knowledge gaps and data gaps, and to continue to provide these implementation and monitoring reports to the PTC on a biannual basis. Then to briefly touch on to the question that we had earlier from Councillor Crowther, part of the Arotake report that was specifically talking to KPI 4, and the question was around the 33% of Tauranga dwellings that currently are within 500 meters of a frequent bus service, so that's 15 minutes or less. So this is based on modelling that we've developed in-house together with our GIS team. So it includes Tauranga and Western Bay dwellings, but it does exclude industrial and commercial addresses. So in Tauranga, I looked this up just before. So currently we've got 3 services that meet this frequent services criteria. So these services are route number 2, route number 5, and route number 55. So this is broadly the Papamoa, the Mount, and the Greerton kind of hospital routes. And these are all key routes. They cover dense areas. So that would kind of explain the quite high number that we've got for Tauranga. And then just the detail that this is a 500 meter from a frequent bus stop. So we're not just looking at the bus route in question, we're looking at dwellings that are within 500 meters of a frequent service bus stop. That's probably enough from me. I'm happy to otherwise take the report as read and to answer any questions.
Councillor Crowther.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll have to, maybe I could have a look at that sometime, although it seems counterintuitive to me that such a small number of routes would add up to a third of the population, but happy to be informed that wrong. In terms of the sort of coloured pie graphs and things and just where they flow through to, I do have some real concerns around that. And I mean, obviously the mode shift carbon reduction, I would say we're lucky to get one green there. And, you know, so to me, that's not looking good at all. But the bigger one, considering the current government's direction, is the public transport and land use integration. And I think we've got a serious problem there. And we have completely missed the opportunity when it existed to step up Tauranga to a sort of a different level of public transport operations. And I think we've really, you know, I'm sort of thinking from a staff point of view, you know, how are you actually, you know, are we heading down the wrong direction even just to keep these actions in there? Because I can't see how it's going to get a lot better given our current funding. And do we need to do something different?
Through the chair, it's a good question, Councillor Crowther. I think the actions will be reviewed when we review the RPTP. So we've got a staged review process of the RPTP where we do a technical review and a full review. The timings of those are evading me right now, but as part of that process and reflecting on what's happened with the government's funding, and that cycle would then be reflected in the way we review that. But yeah, I understand your point in that. I guess the fact that the RPTP was developed under the previous government under a different funding landscape, we've now taken it through to a new landscape, which is why we're more likely to see more red in some of these areas. And as Katri alluded to, a number of those projects have not been funded, which fit within the mode shift space in particular. Holly.
Thank you, Andrew. Through you, Chair, just further to that, I think that this highlights the importance of the TSP, the Transport Partnership. So whilst a lot of the projects that we hope to progress haven't been funded, I think it's important to remember that to deliver it, especially around that land use integration, that's much bigger than regional council. We need all partners involved, and the TSP offers that umbrella to allow us to come together and deliver some things that allow progress in that space. So I think we need to take the time for everyone as part of that TSP to come together and understand how we can still make progress against that with the funding that everyone's got available. What you're seeing here is very much a knee-jerk reaction compared to the programme that we had going into the NLTF process. We get to have the opportunity to come up with that new programme and also do the synchromesh with our partners to understand what we can deliver together to get best bang for buck in the constrained environment we're now operating in.
The question I have on carbon reduction is, when we did the new blueprint and we instigated the latest contract in 2018, we made a decision. We were looking at 10 EV buses, and we made the decision to go to 5. And I've never seen a report since on what the effect of those 5 buses has been on carbon reduction. And you know, what we know today is that they're big heavy beasts, and there's other mitigating factors that make them a bit unattractive, especially in cul-de-sacs out in the suburbs. But have we done any work at all on where we're going with the with the EV transition, which was the previous government said that we we're allowed to buy an ordinary bus after 25, and that's been rescinded, I think.
Yes, so through you, Chair, yes, we have, is the answer to your question. So members that were around this table during the previous triennium will recall that staff undertook a decarbonisation feasibility study. So that study did look at the benefits that the 5 EVs that are operated in Tauranga bring. But ultimately, we were awaiting national direction as to how to proceed with decarb. Decarbonising the fleets within an existing contract will incur additional cost. There were various schemes and opportunities that were talked about to support the regional sector with decarbonising buses. As of today, we're yet to receive any further clarity on what that support might look like. The new governments have spoken about potential dollars to support the decarbonisation of fleets, but there is no operational policy as of today as to what that actually looks like. As of today, the mandate set by the previous government still exists, so you're not allowed to purchase a new vehicle powered purely by fossil fuels beyond 2025, and the entire fleet has to be completely decarbonised by 2035. As of today, those requirements still remain. And as of today, we are assuming that the big gains will be made at the point where we recontract our operations, and the requirement for a new operator to show how they will meet those deadlines when they bring in a new fleet. But we are, as we have been, Catchry's been leading this work for about the last 18 months, awaiting some central direction on this matter.
It is concerning when we think that 2025 and 2030 are both coming around the corner very smartly at us. And then I think about Horizon Regional Council that is spending, I don't know where it's going, but they were still at the local government conference time, which is only a couple of weeks away, planning to spend this coming year $100 million on electrifying the whole of the Palmerston North fleet. And when you work out the size of Palmerston North, the population and the cost of that, it's a pretty big challenge. From the ratepayer point of view, I would have thought. Food for thought. Any further comments? Thank you for your report. And we just move, this one is to receive the report, is it? Yes, just to receive, I'm happy to move. Councillor Thurston will second. All those in favour, please say aye. Yes, carried. So that brings us to the end of the, we just need to move into public excluded to receive the minutes.
So moved.
Moved and seconded by Councillor Lees.
In the minutes of the public transport, confidential minutes seem to be the same as the